Acharya Stota Sat Sri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Sri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakun Radhakun Giri Govardhana Ki Jai. Braj Bhumi Vrindavan Dhama Ki Jai. Navadvip Mayapur Dhama Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dhama Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Yamuna Mai Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Gaura Premanande. All glories to the Simul devotees. All glories to the Simul devotees. All glories to the Simul devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Sri Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 We are reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is. Chapter number 1, entitled Observing the Armies. Texts number 4 through 11. A lot of them don't have any purports. So we should chant together just text number 4, and then I'll read the others as we go through. Atra Shura Mahashvesa Bhimarjuna Samayudi Yuyudhano Viratascha Drupadascha Maharataha Atra Shura Maheshvasa Bhimarjuna Samayudi Yuyudhano Viratascha Drupadascha Maharataha Atra Shura Maheshasa Bhimarjuna Samayudi Yuyudhano Viratascha Drupadascha Maharataha
Atra Sura Maheshvasa Bhimarjuna Samayudi Yuyudhano Viratascha Drupadascha Maharati
Atra Shura Maheshvasa Bhimarjuna Samayudi Yuyudhano Viratascha Drupadascha Maharataha.
Okay, starts.
Atra Sura Maheshvasa
Atra Sura Maheshvasa
Bhimarjuna Samayudi
Bhimarjuna Samayudi
Yuyudhano Viratascha
Drupadascha Maharataha
Atra Sura Maheshvasa
Atra Shura Maheshvasa
Bhimarjuna Samayudi
Bhimarjuna Samayudi
Yuyudhano Viratascha
Yuyudhano Viratascha
Drupadascha Maharataha
Drupadascha Maharataha Drupadascha Drupadascha Maharatha. Atra, here. Shura, heroes. Maha Ishu Asa, mighty bowman. Bhima Arjuna. To Bhima and Arjuna. Samaha, equal. Yudhi, in the fight. Yuyudhana, Virata, Cha, also. Drupada, Cha, also. Maharataha, great fighter. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation. Here in this army are many heroic bowmen, equal in fighting to Bhima and Arjuna, great fighters like Yuyudhana, Virata and Drupada. Please repeat. Here in this army are many heroic bowmen, equal in fighting to Bhima and Arjuna, great fighters like Yuyudhana, Virata and Drupada. Purport. Even though Drishtadyumna was not a very important obstacle in the face of Dronacharya's very great power in the military art, there were many others who were causes of fear. They are mentioned by Duryodhana as great stumbling blocks on the path of victory, because each and every one of them was as formidable as Bhima and Arjuna. He knew the strength of Bhima and Arjuna, thus he compared the others with him. Text number 5. I'll just read the rest of these. Drishtaketas Chekitana Kasirajascha Vidyavan Purajik Kuntibojascha Sabhyascha Narapungavaha. There are also great, heroic, powerful fighters like Drishtaketu, Chekitana, Kasiraj, Purajit, Kuntiboja and Sabhya. Yudhamanyuscha Vikranta Uttamojascha Vidyavan Sobradro Drupadiyascha Sarva Eva Maharataha. There are the mighty Yuyudhamanyu, the very powerful Itamoja, the son of Subhadra and the sons of Draupadi. All these warriors are great chariot fighters. Asmakam tu visishtaye tanni bodan dvijottama Nayaka mama sanyasya samgyatam tan pravimime. But for your information, O best of the Brahmanas, let me tell you about the captains who were especially qualified to lead my military force. Bhavans Bhishmascha Karunascha Kripascha Samitim Jayaha Ashvatthama Vikarunascha Somadatis Tataivacha. There are personalities like you, Bhishma, Karuna, Kripa, Ashvatthama, Vikarna, and the son of Somadatta called Purishvara, who are always victorious in battle. Purport. Duryodhana mentions the exceptional heroes in the battle, all of whom are ever victorious. Vikarna is the brother of Duryodhana, Ashvatthama is the son of Dronacharya, and Somadatti, or Purishvara, is the son of the king of the Bahilakas. Karna is the half-brother of Arjuna, and he was born of Kunti before her marriage with King Pandu. Kripacharya's twin sister married Dronacharya. Anyecha Mahavasura Madarte Chaktajivitaha Nana Shastra Vaharana Sarve Yuddha Visaradaha. There are many other heroes who are prepared to lay down their lives for my sake. All of them are well equipped with different kinds of weapons, and all are experienced in the military science. Purport. As far as the others are concerned, like Jayadratha, Kritavarma and Shalya, all are determined to lay down their lives for Duryodhana's sake, In other words, it is already concluded that all of them will die in the battle of Kurukshetra for joining the party of the sinful Duryodhana. Duryodhana was, of course, confident of his victory on account of the above-mentioned combined strength of his friends. Aparyaptam ta asmakam balam bhishma pirakshitam paryaptam tvibdam etesham balam bhimar pirakshitam. Our strength is immeasurable, and we are perfectly protected by grandfather Bhishma, whereas the strength of the Pandavas, carefully protected by Bhima, is limited. Purport. Herein is an estimation of the comparative strength is made by Duryodhana. He thinks that the strength of his armed forces is immeasurable, being specifically protected by the most experienced general, grandfather Bhishma. On the other hand, the force of the Pandavas are limited, being protected by a less experienced general, Bhima, who was like a fig in the presence of Bhishma. Duryodhana was always envious of Bhima because he knew perfectly well that if he should die at all, he would only be killed by Bhima. But at the same time, he was confident of his victory on account of the presence of Bhishma, who was a far superior general. His conclusion that he would come out of the battle victorious was well ascertained. And the last text. Ayaneshu ta sarveshu yata bhagam avastitaha bhishmam eva virakshantu bhavanta sarva evahi. All of you must now give full support to Grandfather Bhishma as you stand at your respective strategic points of entrance into the phalanx of the army. Purport. Duryodhana, after praising the prowess of Bhishma, further considers that others might think that they have been considered less important. So, in his usual diplomatic way, he tried to adjust the situation in the above words. He emphasized that Bhishma Dev was undoubtedly the greatest hero, but he was an old man, so everyone must especially think of his protection from all sides. He might become engaged in the fight, and the enemy might take advantage of his full engagement on one side. Therefore, it was important that the other heroes do not leave their strategic positions and allow the enemy to break the phalanx. Duryodhana clearly felt that the victory of the Kurus depended on the presence of Bhishma Dev. He was confident of the full support of Bhishma Dev and Dronacharya in the battle, because he well knew that they did not even speak a word when Arjuna's wife Draupadi, in her helpless condition, had appealed to them for justice, while she was being forced to appear naked in the presence of all the great generals in the assembly. Although he knew that the two generals had some sort of affection for the Pandavas, he hoped that these generals would now completely give it up, as they had done during the gambling performances. Om Jnana Tirandasya Gnanandana Shalakaya Chakshuranmalitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Didati Svapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Yuta Padakamalam Sri Guru Navaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sakrijatam Sakana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadibaitam Savadutam Parijana Sudutam Krishna Chaitanya Devo Sri Radha Krishna Param Sahagana Lalita Sri Sakam Vitam Sa Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagapate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namaste Sapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindaveshwari Vrishabhana Sute Devi Pranami Hari Priye Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna Krishna Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Now, please forgive me, but I'm not going to go through and read them for a second time, because there was awful lot of them. So here at this point, we're setting the scene for the speaking of the Bhagavad Gita. In this selection of verses, we're learning about the material qualifications of Duryodhana, who's the big bad guy in this story. But as we find out as we read these verses, and as Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport, he's actually a great diplomat, and he has amassed a great army. His army is greater than the army on the other side. And even in text number 9, he is saying that many of these heroes are prepared to lay down their lives for him. And Srila Prabhupada in the purport is also agreeing with this. So it's not just that these great heroes are fighting against Krishna. Many of them also are inimical towards Krishna. But also they are very faithful to Duryodhana. So he has many followers. He is materially a very qualified king, except that he's a big cheat. Materially even, he's a big cheat. But what I would try to look at today is, as we've been learning in the classes on the introduction, and also the class that Shri Prabhu gave, which was very nice, about the qualification one needs to be a proper student of the Bhagavad Gita. And Duryodhana didn't have that. So it seemed to me, as we were learning from the introduction to the Bhagavad Gita, that Srila Prabhupada's introduction to the Bhagavad Gita is the first study guide we need for the Bhagavad Gita, because it gives us so much about how we should learn from the Bhagavad Gita. Because in this selection of verses, I could have studied the Mahabharata and told you all about these great heroes. But that would not have had so much relevance to all of us as devotees. Because these heroes are great historical figures. And they are very relevant, their names are relevant because they're associated with Krishna. But personally for us, it's better for us to learn how we can apply what we're learning to achieve the purpose of the Bhagavad Gita. So, in this selection of verses, Duryodhana is talking to Dronacharya, his teacher. And he's very diplomatically first giving him an appraisal of the armies on the opposing side and saying how strong they are, to try and incite him to fight well. And then he's saying, rather than let him get discouraged by the army on the other side, he's saying, but we also have great generals, like Bhishma. And when he's summing up, he's saying, but you Dronacharya, you are also a very key person, because he understands the position of Dronacharya as the guru. So although Duryodhana has very great respect for Bhishma, the position of Dronacharya is higher, because Dronacharya is a Brahmana and Bhishma is a Kshatriya. So in this last verse, second to last verse, he says, by you as well as by Bhishma. So he says Dronacharya first. So we can see he's very qualified as a politician and as a leader. Srila Prabhupada mentions in the purport how he then encourages all the people that are listening that you are also important, you also have to support Bhishma. So I was remembering where some of this heroes and some of this action is retold in the Bhagavatam. And of course, in the first canto, in the 8th chapter, Queen Kunti, she prays to Krishna just as he's about to leave after the battle. And she prays how the Pandavas all suffered such great calamities during their time in exile and in trying to get their rightful share of the kingdom. And she prays, may all those calamities happen again, because by that we remember you. So this is one of the qualities that would make one a serious follower of the Bhagavad Gita, the instructions of the Bhagavad Gita. And following her, there is the story of the passing away of the Bhishma Dev. So Bhishma Dev is a great hero because of family loyalty. He fought on the side of Duryodhana. He was the general. But actually he was a very great devotee of Krishna. And his service was to fight with Krishna, because he was in one of the secondary rasas, the chivalrous ras, where he was ecstatically, at this point when he was dying on the bed of arrows, he was ecstatically remembering Krishna, covered in the dust of the battle, covered with specks of blood that was shining like jewels, and like that. And this is a mood of devotion to Krishna. And he also prays how Lord Krishna had saved the Pandavas from so much misfortune, and had protected them. And then after the passing away of Bhishma Dev, we turn to the disappearance of Lord Krishna. And some parts that I would like to read out is where Arjuna comes back to King Yudhisthira, and Arjuna knows that Krishna has left the planet, and Yudhisthira is wondering why he's looking so downfallen, why he's looking so depressed. And so he inquires about his health, and the health of all his relatives, and the health of Krishna. So Yudhisthira begins by asking about Arjuna's health, because he can see how downfallen Arjuna is. He says, My dear Arjuna, please tell me if your health is all right. You appear to have lost your bodily luster. Is it due to others disrespecting and neglecting you because of your long stay in Dwarka? Has someone addressed you with unfriendly words or threatened you? Could you not give in charity to one who asked? Or could you not keep your promise to someone? You are always the protector of deserving living entities, such as the brahmanas, children, cows, women and diseased. Could you not give them protection when they approached you for shelter? So Yudhishthira is thinking that the cause for Arjuna's depressed outlook must be that he failed in his duty in some way. But of course he realizes within himself, and he concludes this chapter 14. Or is it that you are feeling empty for all time because you might have lost your most intimate friend, Lord Krishna? Oh my brother Arjuna, I can think of no other reason for you becoming so dejected. So Arjuna replies about all the things that Krishna has done for him. Arjuna says, O King, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, who has treated me exactly like an intimate friend, has left me alone. Thus my astounding power, which astonished even the demigods, is no longer with me. Because at this point he's just come back after the queens had been stolen from him by a group of cowherd boys, who we find by the acharyas were actually Krishna himself. I have just lost him whose separation for a moment would render all the universes unfavourable and void, like bodies without life. Only by his merciful strength was I able to vanquish all the lusty princes assembled in the palace of King Drupad for the selection of the bridegroom. With my bow and arrow I could pierce the fish target and there again the hand of Draupadi. So he continues like this for quite some time, and then he comes to the war itself. He speaks also about how he got all the weapons from the demigods. It was by his influence only that in a fight I was able to astonish the personality of God, Lord Shiva and his wife, the daughter of Mount Himalaya. Thus he, Lord Shiva, became pleased with me in awarding me his own weapon. Other demigods also delivered their respective weapons to me. And in addition, I was able to reach the heavenly planets in this present body and allowed a half-elevated seat. When I stayed for some time as a guest in the heavenly planets, all the heavenly demigods, including King Indradev, took shelter of my arms, which were marked with the Gandhiva bow, to kill the demon named Vidatakavacha. O King, the descendant of Ajamita, at the present moment I am bereft of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by whose influence I was so powerful. The military strength of the Kauravas was like an ocean in which there dwelled many invincible existences, and that it was insurmountable. But because of his friendship, I was seated on the chariot and was able to cross over it. And only by his grace was I able to regain the cows and collect by force the many helmets of the kings which were bedecked with jewels that were the sources of all brilliance. It was he only who withdrew the duration of life from everyone, and who, in the battlefield, withdrew the speculative power and strength of enthusiasm from the great military phalanx made by the Kauravas, headed by Bhishma, Karna, Drona, Shalya, etc. Their arrangement was expert and more than adequate, but he, Lord Shri Krishna, while going forward, did all this. Great generals like Bhishma, Drona, Karna, Burishvara, Susarma, Shalya, Jayadratha, Baharika, all directed their invincible weapons against me. But by his, Lord Krishna's grace, they could not even touch a hair on my head. Similarly, Prahlad Maharaj, the supreme devotee of Lord Narasimhadev, was unaffected by the weapons of the demons used against him. So Arjuna is very aware that Krishna is his maintainer and his protector. Like in the 6 symptoms of surrender, we accept only things that are favourable for devotional service. We reject all things unfavourable. We accept Krishna as our protector and we accept him as our maintainer. We surrender to him fully, and we do this in a state of humility. So these are some of the qualities of a devotee. So I said I was going to talk about some of the comparison between the disqualifications of Duryodhana and the qualifications of Arjuna, who's the proper recipient of the Bhagavad Gita. So I'm going to ask for you to say something at this point. So just some short points on the disqualifications of Duryodhana and the qualifications of Arjuna, as we've been hearing in these classes in the last few days. Does anyone like to say something?
Arjuna was a devotee.
Yeah, we've got a mic so that the people on the radio can hear. Here, just go. Yeah, you need to turn it on.
Arjuna was a devotee.
Yes. So what does being a devotee mean?
Prabhupada mentions in the introduction that's the primary qualification, you could say, to understand the instruction of Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah.
You must be a devotee.
Yeah, that's one of the, when he's mentioning in the spirit of the Bhagavad Gita, a very important point. If someone else would like to add something?
You can see something here without knowing much else in kind of the duplicitous thinking of Duryodhana. Because in one sense here, he's talking about how great the fighters are. But if they're so great, why is he comparing them to Bhima and Arjuna and Drupada? Why is he thinking that way? And also later, when he's saying our strength is immeasurable, because we're protected by Grandfather Bhishma. But then he simultaneously says, oh, but all of you should be careful to protect Grandfather Bhishma. If you need to protect him, then his strength is not so great. If his strength is that great, then why do we need to protect him? So this is part of the thinking in Duryodhana's mind, because as they discussed, he wants what he wants, so he thinks everything is in order. So he kind of has a big ego but low self-esteem.
Yeah.
He's so strong about what he thinks he's going to do, but at the same time, he's so afraid it isn't going to work out, and it shows just in the way he's presenting.
Okay, so some of what he's saying is like a false front, just to say that he's the best.
Duplicitous, both things at the same time. He's thinking he's the best, but he's showing fear that the other people may have something also.
Yeah, good. Someone else like to add something about some of the qualities?
Arjuna was very humble in his approach to Krishna, whereas Duryodhana was very conceited and very arrogant.
Yeah, that's a good point. And that, of course, came out before the battlefield, when they were both by Krishna's bedside waiting for him to wake up, and they both thought they would get the first choice of what Krishna would offer. And so Duryodhana stayed right by his side. and Arjuna stood down by his feet. But it just so happened that when Krishna woke up, he looked down toward his feet and saw Arjuna first, even though Duryodhana had been there first. And Duryodhana was furious because he was going to let Arjuna say what he wanted first. But Arjuna said, "No, it's okay, don't mind, you can have the first choice." And Krishna says to Duryodhana, "Which do you want? Do you want me or my army?" So here again is an example of Duryodhana's simply material calculation. Because he had some insight, as we heard in the last class, he had some insight that Krishna was the Supreme Personality Godhead, but he was trying to deny it because he wanted what he wanted. So he thought, in material calculations, a great army is much better than one person. So he completely ignored the fact that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So he said, "I'll take the army." And Arjuna said, "No problem, I only want Krishna anyway." So it's an example of Arjuna's humility, the way he dealt with it, and didn't try to say, "No, I'm first, I'm Arjuna, I'm Krishna's friend." Does anyone else have any qualities they'd like to speak about that differentiates the proper student of the Bhagavad Gita from the improper student of the Bhagavad Gita? Mike's over this side.
He was, as all his brothers, were very righteous and understood actually what Krishna's will is. And he was always a great friend of Krishna, which makes him a very good receptacle for the instructions.
Okay, so there's one other part here in Arjuna's speech that I'd like to read, because he actually speaks about the instructions of the Bhagavad Gita. After he describes how, by Krishna's arrangement, all the Yadus are now dead because of the curse of the Brahmanas, he's concluding what he has to say. He says, "Now I am attracted to those instructions imparted to me by the personality of Godhead, Govinda, because they are impregnated with instructions for relieving the burning heart in all circumstances of time and space." And in this purport, Srila Prabhupada almost gives a summary of his introduction to the Bhagavad Gita. A very nice summary is there. And then Sutta Goswami also continues after this. Sutta Goswami said, "Thus deeply absorbed in thinking of the instructions of the Lord, which were imparted in the great intimacy of friendship, and in thinking of his lotus feet, Arjuna's mind became pacified and free from all material contamination." So at this point, because Arjuna was constantly meditating on the instructions of Krishna, as were given, that we're studying in the Bhagavad Gita, it's described that any remaining anarthas, any remaining problems, in the following verse, Sutta Goswami says, "Arjuna's constant remembrance of the lotus feet of Lord Sri Krishna rapidly increased his devotion, and as a result of all, the trash in his thoughts subsided." So this was what Srila Prabhupada was making out as he was concluding the purpose of the Bhagavad Gita, that by absorption in Krishna, everything else will subside. And that the goal of our study of the Bhagavad Gita is to become absorbed in Krishna by meditating on his instructions and his pastimes. And as a result, we'll become free from the contamination with the material energy. So at this point, I'd like to ask if there are any questions or comments or corrections anyone would like to make. Take a step back over this side.
We could see how Arjuna was very trusting, like he completely trusted Krishna's plan for his life. I was wondering if you can give some suggestions for how we can develop that trust in Krishna for his plan for our lives.
So our process is a very natural one. Krishna has given us his external representation, the spiritual master. And the example is there in how Srila Prabhupada spread Krishna consciousness. When he went to America, he didn't immediately start preaching, but immediately by the display of his saintly qualities and by his service to the people, he developed the trust of his devotees. So, in the beginning, it was the spiritual master serving the devotees. But soon they developed such love and such faith that they would give up their lives for Srila Prabhupada and they would do anything. So, to develop faith in Krishna abstractly is very difficult, because at the moment we are still trying to learn who Krishna is. We don't know Krishna. But by association with the devotees, with our Siksha Gurus and Diksha Gurus, in association with all the devotees, we are associating with the saintly qualities that will help to develop our faith and trust. And of course, if we remain on the material platform, we might find so many faults in all the devotees around us. But we have to develop the determination to follow the process and understand that it's our material contamination that's finding fault in others. There's a nice verse in the 108 names of Lord Chaitanya by Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. And in this one verse, it says that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu always saw the good qualities in others and never saw the faults. So we have to develop faith by the association of the devotees and the spiritual master. And in that way, we can develop faith in the process. And that's the most important. Srila Prabhupada would always give the example, I may not be perfect, but the process I follow is perfect. And of course, we all consider that Srila Prabhupada is perfect. But he set an example for us, is that we shouldn't be looking for someone material perfect as our spiritual master. We should be looking for the one who's giving us the perfect process. And by developing the service attitude, the faith will come. We begin by serving Guru, by serving the deities, and by serving the holy name, which is, for me, a great meditation, because how understanding theoretically that the name of Krishna and Krishna are exactly the same, but how we translate that into a service attitude must come from our physical seva first. We develop a service attitude, and the service attitude will spread. And so, by Krishna's name, Nama, Rupa, Guna, Lila. First the name, we are taking the name. We're chanting Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And as we continue in this process, we begin to develop some relationship with the form of Krishna. He's right here in the temple. So this is the form of Krishna. So in the beginning, we might not see him as Krishna. We might see him only as an object, very beautiful, but an object. But as we keep chanting, we develop a relationship with this form of Krishna. And we begin to serve this deity form of Krishna. And by this service, and by maintaining our process of devotional service, then we will manifest saintly qualities. The qualities will become manifest to us, and we'll be able to recognize them in others. And then, of course, the Leela comes later, when we're fully purified of all material contamination. Then we have some entrance into the Leela. Before that, we can learn about it, but we have no entrance. Is there something else you'd like to ask? Any other comment or question?
Service to the devotees is just as important.
Yes, service to the devotees.
You were asking about the difference in Duryodhana and Arjuna, and a couple things you see there is that when Arjuna didn't know what to do, he asked Krishna, now what do I do? And got his purpose in mind first.
Yes.
And he took instruction from him, whereas both Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana are going to people who they obviously are showing are more qualified. Dhritarashtra is asking Sanjaya, what did my sons do?
Yeah.
So obviously Sanjaya is more qualified, he can see. And Duryodhana is obviously showing that Dronacharya is more qualified. So then why isn't Dhritarashtra asking Sanjaya, well, what should I do now? And why isn't Duryodhana asking Dronacharya, well, what should I do now? They're going to somebody more qualified and telling them what they think they need to do. That's why we saw when people thought they knew more than Prabhupada, when Prabhupada was not only the spiritual master, but had a lot more education than they did. They were not only wrong, but had difficulties.
Yes.
And in the other case, when Krishna approached the Kurus for the Pandavas, he was willing to negotiate and give them even more than what was fair, give them a good chance.
Yeah.
And they weren't willing to give on that. Not only were they wrong, but where Duryodhana and Dhritarashtra are out here trying to analyze their strength, if they were going to do that, they really should have done that before they did the negotiation. And see that, okay, if we do have this strength, we won't give something. But why are they not willing to give something when they really aren't sure of their strength? Why are they asking later on? They should have done it then, and out of diplomacy negotiated something because they realized maybe they can't win. But again, being blinded by their own greed, they didn't take the advice from the proper people, and they didn't analyze their situation at the right time. It's a little late now, isn't it?
A little late now.
Fortunately.
That's the influence of the modes, isn't it? The mode of passion is reactive, whereas the mode of goodness is proactive.
With your permission, could I comment on the earlier question?
Please do.
I think your question was, how do we develop the kind of trust Arjuna had in Krishna? Srila Prabhupada writes that in one place in the Gita, that in order to have the kind of trust or faith in Krishna that Arjuna had, it depends on having a relationship with Krishna. Because you know the person and you trust them, you believe in them. And he said the relationship is dependent upon knowing about them. In other words, if you don't have a relationship, how do you get one is when you get to know them. It's the verse, Janma Karma Chamedina. One once you know more about Krishna, what he is, who he is, then your relationship develops. From your relationship, your trust develops. That's
Good.
one or two.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Okay. Jai. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita, it is.
Thank you very much.